Hello and welcome to Bobst Italia, the Competence Centre at San Giorgio Monferrato. You're joining us today for a roundtable discussion on sustainability within the flexible packaging industry. My name is Michal Lodej. I'm the editor of Flexotech magazine, and I'll be chairing this debate, which will look to evaluate how consumers are driving sustainability, how brand owners are reacting, and how converters can meet the demands of both brand owners and consumers. Gentlemen, thank you all very much for joining us today. I think we know by now that consumers of packaging want a sustainable packaging industry. However, they are not experts in the field and they don't have any credentials. So, starting with the consumer, as we do with most packaging designs, what do consumers want from their packaging? David, I think you're best placed to answer this question as managing partner of Ipsos Strategy 3.
Thank you, Michal. A little bit of context to start with. Attention and interest towards sustainability has been increasing a lot in the last few years and is on the surge currently. This is driven by a number of key stakeholder groups. There is an industry, of course. There is distribution, there is financial institutions, regulators, policymakers, governments, and the consumer. And what motivates the consumers towards sustainability is fundamentally two things. One is the fear for the future. So wanting to do something today to mitigate that and to prepare for somehow a better future. And also what we call the new ethics. So within that will be do the right thing, consume well. So it's interesting as the consumer evolves their knowledge about sustainability, their sensitivity about it, they found a lack of information about it. Information is often incomplete, not completely trustworthy, not completely accurate. Think about the greenwashing that's going on, and consumer pick on it. So a kind of a gap is being established between what the consumer needs and wants as they grow their knowledge about sustainability and their interest and what's provided for them. And that's where packaging comes into the play, because packaging has a dual function historically and now very much so. One is the material itself, right? It's the first moment of truth, as we call it. It's the first moment in which the consumer touches the output of the company, and the communication that goes with it. Really, through the packaging, companies have the ability to communicate the sustainability story in a very big way, but a story that has to be credible, authentic, and relevant. And of course, consumers are not all born equal, so it's of paramount importance for companies to truly understand the consumer well, to leverage, the packaging as good as they can.
Okay, Jesus, as the flexible packaging end-of-use management manager for Danone, can you tell us how brand owners are reacting to these trends and demands?
So packaging is a fundamental part in our daily lives. We as a brand owner recognize that this cannot come at the expense of the health of the planet. So we have a part of responsibility in this. Our approach to packaging plays an important role into this. So our main goal is to accelerate the transition from linear economy to circular economy by keeping the materials within the economy and out of nature. So if we take the concrete example of flexible packaging, flexible packaging is a combination of different materials like plastic films, aluminum foils, or paper. And this combination of different materials brings a lot of functionality in a really thin and light packaging. Nevertheless, this combination of materials is detrimental for mechanical recycling. It brings complexity. So we need to rethink our packaging. We need to redesign our packaging for recycling. So what are the options on the table we have to redesign our packaging for recycling? So the first option would be to simplify the current complex structures and to avoid detrimental structures for recycling. So the first option would be to move from multi-material options to mono-material options. Doing this will allow the recyclability of these mono-material solutions. But then we have other options on the table like compostable or biodegradable laminates. That could be an option for small markets. But then we have also paper laminates, paper barriers. And this is another option because this is well perceived by consumers. So as you can see, we have different options on the market.
And in the effort to move from traditional multi-material packaging to new mono-material film-based solutions, what challenges have you faced?
Well, monomaterials are technically recyclable. The recycling streams are under development within Europe, but the collection systems are widespread in Europe, and the recycling streams are not developed yet everywhere. So, and then we have also the feedstock quality. So the combination of the lack of the recycling infrastructures and the feedstock quality, it's slowing the move from multi-materials to monomaterials. So that's the big problem with them. So that's why rethinking our flexible packaging or with the design for packaging, it's more important than ever. We need to be more intelligent than that and to develop new solutions answering to these kind of questions.
Akim, as a converter, you're sat between the consumer and the brand owner, but packaging providers are also caught up within legislation. As Senior Vice President for Group R&D for Constantia Flexibles, can you tell us how legislation is influencing the boundaries of any new packaging structures?
Yeah, indeed. These legislations, if we talk about the Single-Use Plastics Directive or the Packaging Waste Directive, these legislations have a potentially disruptive nature for our industry. Flexible packaging is definitely more affected, and it's more challenging for flexible packaging than for rigid. Why? Over decades, we have optimized the performance of our packaging. We have made them thinner and thinner by combining different materials to achieve the best functionality with lowest resource consumption. But we have forgot a little bit the recycling over that in the last decades. And now we have to rapidly learn what does that mean if a product is recyclable. These recycling guidelines are not yet finally defined. There are intensive discussion between different European gremia, like the European recyclers with their Recyclers initiative, or the flexible packaging industry with the C-Flex initiative, just to name the two most prominent ones. But I'm seeing here, and being active in all these gremia, I'm seeing that we are coming more and more to a consensus that new recycling technologies will not give us a solution alone. We need very ambitious design for recycling guidelines, means monomaterials that's widely accepted will replace laminates like polyester PE, for example, or polyamide PE. And these demanding guidelines together with new recycling technologies can only allow us to create higher quality recyclates, which we can reuse even in thin-walled packaging.
And as an international provider of packaging, is there a difficulty when you're selling packaging in many different countries? Is there a legislative barriers involved with that?
I hope that this will not happen, that we have to create packaging for each European country in a different way. That would be neither economic nor ecologic to do so. And a bad example in that sense is the Single-Use Plastics Directive, which is a directive, meaning a frame, for the different European countries, and each country is interpreting it differently. Just as an example, how Italy is treating the biodegradable polymers as an example, other countries don't do that, just to mention one of the many examples. In the Packaging Waste Directive, there is actually, for that reason, a discussion that this will become and should become a regulation, means a strict European common standard, and believe it or not, we as industry, we are supporting such a standard. It's better to have something more strict but harmonized than to have here a different solution for each country.
And Rossano, you've been with SIT Group since 2003, and now as senior technical account manager. Can you say why barrier solutions are now integral to R&D research when perhaps in the last 20 years they weren't as important?
Yeah, this is a crucial point because replacing aluminium, replacing AVH, replacing the standard way to create barrier nowadays, it's a way to match to monomaterial. Okay, moving from aluminium, moving from a certain product market sector in which since 20 years or 30 years the same material has been used, it's a crucial point because it's not only point of recyclability, it's point even of machinability, is production performances, shelf life, whatever, cost. And all of this stuff you have to put together to find a solution which is reliable. And furthermore, you have to understand that moving from a certain structure to another one means even to change the idea about that product. It's a matter of habits. Yeah, you can make many different examples of coffee. For coffee, you have aluminium since ever. And if you move away from that point of view, you have to convince your customer, the customer, my customer, which is the same, which is better, which is something more reliable. It's a long way. It's a long way to run, and it's a challenge.
Xavier, hearing now what consumers want, what brand owners need, and the challenges that converters have, how can Bobst respond in making packaging more sustainable?
Hi, thanks. So I think the dear fact that we are sitting together in the competence center in San Giorgio is a good example on how Bobst can help by bringing together all the players in the flexible packaging industry, brand owners, converters, raw material suppliers, Bobst own specialists. Bobst is creating really a focus, a meeting point to allow this new development and making sure that the created solution can be tested and manufactured under good conditions.
David, I wonder if there's any danger of the tail wagging the dog. How much risk is there by following consumer demands that the industry takes a wrong turn? Who should be guiding this conversation and keeping the process grounded and rational?
Look, I think it's less about who should be guiding it, who should be given this enormous responsibility to make decisions on sustainability matters. So, for example, would that be the consumer? The consumer, we know they can be wrong. You know, they can follow fast fashion, so fast trends. They can be influenced easily. They don't have the full perspective, you know, that such a decision requires. Would that be the industry? Made big mistakes in the past with plastic, right? So it's less about who, it's more about what. And so keeping the topic at the center of discussion of the key stakeholders and creating a space for key stakeholders to elaborate, decide, and craft solutions that together and collaboratively can satisfy different needs, among which those are the consumers. But I think it transcends just the consumer needs.
Well, specifically for packaging, we're faced with a complex problem, being that plastic has been demonized and it's difficult to go back. So how can we prevent materials being made a scapegoat in the future?
Plastic has been demonized, yes, and why is that? It's because it has been abused, used, misused, and the story was not being able to be crafted, you know, since the 80s. And so at some point, we reached a point where it was easier and more effective to look for new solutions as opposed to, you know, look backward and fix what was done. And therefore, this reiteration continued to demonize plastic. So we are a little bit of in a vicious circle, which is the loop where we are now. But there is a good thing about the consumers, is that upon giving them authentic, positive, concrete, specific, and relevant stories, they are willing to change their position on things. So I think in the new ecosystem of the packaging development and new solutions that are fit for the use, finding roles to the different packaging materials and different packaging and to plastic. Plastic is today, tomorrow could be something else, right? And telling the right story, authentic story about those roles can give a chance to consumers to re-evaluate their position and to change it. Worth trying it, I think.
Jesus, when developing new solutions for the market, what steps has Danone made to make sure that they're viable for the market, considering end of life and how materials are being managed in the various collecting and recycling facilities?
To make sure we are making the right choices when it comes to choose the right materials for our packaging, Danone is an active member in different organizations, consortiums, and we are in contact with different organisms. So, for example, Danone is an active member within CFlex since 2018. We are also taking part of the technical committee of the flexible packaging of Recyclas, and we are also taking part of the conversations within Association of Plastic Recyclers of in the USA. But on top of this, we have internal projects to evaluate the behavior of our packaging on the sorting centers. We also evaluate the behavior of our packaging during the recycling process. So we have many projects to make the right choices when it comes to the redesign of our flexible packaging.
And paper is often cited as a plastic alternative for packaging. Can you tell us about some of the challenges you faced when looking at paper solutions for packaging?
Paper is well perceived by consumers, so that's the good point of paper because of its natural feeling and because of its end of life. It's recyclable in most of the countries. But when it comes to our applications, paper presents some challenges. So for example, for most of our applications, we need high barrier properties in our packaging to guarantee the quality of our products. So that's why when it comes to paper, paper has a porous surface, it has hygroscopic structure, and it has a three-dimensional surface. So that's why the surface treatment is super important for us to have the right properties in the final packaging. Okay, so that's why we need to apply a coating or a metallization to reach the right barrier properties. So for this, to have a smooth and flat surface is super important for us. Okay, and then paper presents some challenges like and during converting, paper doesn't have sealing properties, so we usually need to add some sealing layers on top of the paper to guarantee the sealability of our packaging. And also paper presents some changes during the converting. It can slow the runnability of our lines. We need to adapt our lines when it comes to the use of paper. The paper presents some challenges, but it's a good option. So that's why we need to rethink again our packaging and make sure we're making the right choices.
Rossano, the steps taken forward in sustainability with new solutions, can these have a transversal role across the different goods sectors, or is it always going to be a case-by-case scenario?
Of course, according to the expertise of each company, you can face the customer that you have to work with. Of course, our experience as HEAT, we have a very wide spread of different customers and different market sector. This means that the crossover between a sector to another one during this revolution of monomaterial or paper changing, it's crucial for us. We've seen that many different experiences we've done in a certain sector is much more closer to another one than before you never think about. You ever think that it can be useful? Yeah, it's useful, incredibly useful. So it depends, of course, on shelf life, it depends on many different and sometimes unexpected factor, yeah? But we've seen that at this wide spread of a market sector, the crossover is really a weapon for us.
Jesus, in 2019, Danone, along with many other brand owners, launched pledges to help their sustainability targets. With reference to the final target of the journey, how's that going?
Well, still pursuing our targets, and we are making some progress year after year. So if we take the example of the circular economy, now 84% of our packaging is recyclable, reusable, or compostable, compared to 81% in 2019. So we are making some progress year after year.
And if you could put your money on which would be the most dominant
That's a tricky question.
new sustainable packaging solution of the future, what would you say?
Well, we can say that the perfect solution doesn't exist. It will depend on the application. It will depend on the product we want to pack. So for some of the applications, maybe paper-based packaging will make sense, but for others, maybe monomaterial solutions will make more sense. So for each product, we need to think about what's the best packaging we need to use. And for example, if we think about rigid packaging in which we will be laminating a flexible laminate, in this case, maybe the paper-based barrier papers will make sense in order to increase the paper content in the total packaging. So for this case, maybe the barrier papers would make sense. But for other applications like wraps or pouches, maybe monomaterials would make sense, but also barrier papers. So we need to think about what kind of paper, what kind of coating we'll be applying on it. Do we want to work on the development of new water-based coatings to make them even more sustainable and to increase the paper content? We need to think about everything. And we need also to think about what we are doing this. The main target is to make this packaging recyclable. We know that the paper content is different depending on the country. So we need to adapt our structures depending on the paper content it's requested in each country.
Knowing what the consumer wants and what your customer, the brand owner, needs, how do you ensure, Akim, that you can create packaging that meets these requirements whilst at the same time remaining competitive?
That's a very good question. Our company is one of the largest in the market, and therefore we are almost servicing all the packaging formats you see today in supermarkets. And we are working with all the materials, the different plastics, paper, and aluminum. And you can imagine it is a challenge to fulfill also our pledge to renovate thousands of specifications until 25 and be capable to offer for all solutions a recyclable alternative. How are we doing that? First of all, we identify what is the main material, and then we maximize its share. We have also recycling experts internally in our R&D team who can give us early enough, often prior recycling guidelines are defined, the hint what materials and what chemistry we better let out. And thus we are creating our so-called ecolutions. And these ecolutions are also made of aluminum, which will remain a packaging material of choice for highest barrier application. One example is pharmaceutical packaging, where you need really very high barrier. You can hardly achieve with paper or even plastics. And then, of course, the monomaterials. And in order to cope with also the cost pressure, the capabilities for our customers to pay us upcharges for these alternatives are limited. Say it like this. But on the other side, it's also challenging to come cost neutral with systems which have been optimized over decades. So therefore, in one example with polyethylene monomaterials we have identified, we have not found the right pre-materials on the market, and then we started to develop ourselves a well-performing and cost-efficient oriented PE film. That's just one example how we cope with that. So that means for us, polyethylene will be the alternative for most flexible packaging applications where today PET PE and OPA PE is used. Polypropylene will keep its role. The recyclers have to find outlets for the recyclates. That will be here the main challenge. But polyprop is a good recyclable material as such. And of course, paper is increasing demand from consumers. The question is the eco-balance always advantageous? And therefore, we want to consult our customers with a broad portfolio, and at the end, together find the best solution for the given application.
And Rossana, the same question for you.
I agree 100% to Akim, of course, I won't repeat. I want to add a point. When more and more day by day packaging means communication. This means that when we face our customer, we face somebody that wants to know, as a standard consumer, and my mom is my point of reference, which is the difference in terms of recyclability from a monomaterial than a multi-material. I have to explain which is the difference, right? You have to explain that monomaterial is more sustainable, then polyamide is different to polyethylene and polypropylene. Yeah, it's a technical stuff, yeah. You have to explain. But for example, paper communicates itself. The meaning is when we propose something which is recyclable, sustainable, whatever, we have to propose something that our customer asks that even seem to be recyclable, seem to be sustainable. Of course, it's a balance, it's a compromise we have to find in this direction. And as Akim said, when we advise our customer, we need to advise them in order to avoid the point to me crucial, which is the greenwashing. Yeah, that's what we have to avoid, because otherwise all the effort we are doing is going in the wrong direction. Okay, so the compromise, the emotional side of packaging, it's a crucial point that we have to really work on it.
Xavier, how does Bobst help converters meet these pressures? And how can you, as a machine manufacturer, support sustainable processes within packaging?
So we think that the big work and support that Bobst can do here is to make sure that it has and continue develop machines, converting machines that allow to process all these new sustainable packaging solution, being mono material based one, being paper-based one, or being compostable ones. And together, in a collaborative way, making sure to be able to have this material in an optimum settings, in an optimum parameters, run on the machine with maximized speed, minimized settings and setup times and length. And doing that, we allow our converters to be able to offer a good costing situation or base, and also reduce especially the waste, hence in improving also the sustainability.
So how does Bobst see the future of packaging printing?
Oh yeah, so talking about the future is always a tricky one. I mean, you've asked a couple of very good and tricky questions. In our opinion, we will continue to have flexographic and rotogravure printing technology coexisting in the market. We see that we will have more and more digital application coming in, meaning in the Bobst language, the all-in-one machines, a combination of flexo and digital. And we see that the topic of automation and digitalization are coming more and more in these fields.
Gentlemen, thank you all for your time. I think we've had some really good insights there into how this industry has really taken on the sustainability point with both hands and is trying really hard to make a more sustainable future. There's never going to be a one-size-fits-all solution when it comes to packaging, but it's clear to see that this industry is moving in the right way. That's all from us here at Bobst Italia, so thank you for joining us. Ciao.